Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 19. It's called The First Duty. So, full spoilers for the episode. As always, this episode sees the Enterprise back on Earth, Starfleet Academy in particular, and Picard, bless him, he's excited to see Wesley again. It's been a while, he's been off doing his studies. But just before they arrive, they find out that Wesley has been in an accident which left a cadet dead. Wesley, for better or worse, is okay. But someone else did snuff it. Because he made it into the flight training program of the school, and they were doing a test run of some kind, and there was a collision, someone died, and this episode largely revolves around the hearing and the investigation into what happened, and it's pretty clear early on that there's more that's not being said. Wesley's clearly got some things on his conscience that he's holding in.
This episode basically revolves around the premise that Wesley Crusher is not in complete control.
That's precise. That is very much precise. Yeah, so that's the basic gist of it. So what's funny is that, you know, as often happens with these episodes, I'll mention to Tara like what the next one is, because she's like, you know, uber Trek fan, and she mentioned there was a good Picard speech in this episode. I mean, oh, okay, I enjoy a good Picard speech. You know, that's always something. What was neglected to be mentioned is that the Picard speech in question for this episode would be him grilling Wesley. It's not some speech he makes to a group of people saying, "Oh, this is how we should be better and we shouldn't give in to our demons." No, he's like, "Wesley, I've always believed that you would be a great officer until today." So,
it's satisfying. Yeah,
I did get some satisfaction out of that. What did you think of The First Duty?
It's not bad. It's pretty solid. We've had a couple of, you know, like trial episodes on this show, and I think this is on the weaker end of those, unfortunately, because there's at least two that come to mind that are two of the best episodes of the show.
Yeah.
So the immediately it's, you know, it draws comparisons to those. I don't think it stands up to those, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent episode. I mean, I wasn't thinking about Measure of a Man or the Drumhead, which I'm sure the two episodes that you're referring to.
They are, and you know, I'm not saying this episode is, you know, it's a fairly, you know, common enough thing to do, but because this show's already done a couple of stellar examples of it, it's on the mind.
I think what makes this different, though, it's kind of the point I was getting at before with Picard, is that I hear Picard's speech and I expect a speech like the Drumhead, like Measure of a Man, where he's trying to convince people to believe in something better and to convince them of the right thing to do. And well, yes, his speech I hear is still, in essence, convincing Wesley to do the right thing. The actual hearing itself isn't about winning or convincing anyone of anything. It's about Wesley making the choice to own up to what the truth is. So it's very different in terms of what the outcome's supposed to be. You know, it's just more about him making the moral choice to like come forward no matter what the consequences are going to be.
It is. The difference in those earlier cases are trying to convince the jury of innocence, usually, whereas this here is trying to convince the defendant to, you know, come clean.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it works mostly pretty well. I think there's a lot. We're not completely missing. You do actually see Riker and Troy right at the start of the episode. They've got like one brief scene, but a lot of the cast are missing this episode. You do get a lot of Wesley. I think it is kind of interesting that even though he's been off the show as a regular for mostly 2 seasons now, it is quite fascinating that, you know, when he does come back for an episode, we can just treat him like a main character again, like he's never been gone, and it doesn't feel weird. It's like, oh, we're just checking in with Wesley.
It's just a Wesley episode. Yeah.
Even though he's not been around for a significant amount of time. It's funny because it actually makes him going off to school feel real, to like check it, because even though like there's reasons why he might have had a reduced amount of time in the show and it was convenient to say, oh, he's going off to Starfleet Academy, like Picard like talking to him about like his semester and the fact that he's going to have to repeat a year at the end, it was like, yeah, I actually kind of feels like he's been gone at least a full year now of like school time.
Yeah.
And
now, whatever real world obligations meant that he wasn't a regular, we just bought ourselves another year.
Yes. And I assume Starfleet Academy is more than 1 year anyway, so it's probably...
I assume so, yeah.
I assume it's at least a few years, unless they've really, like, perfected the education system down to such a level that they can knock
He's
it
on
out in a year.
an accelerated course. I don't know if unis by you offered that, where instead of doing a 3-year course, you stayed over the summers and did a 2-year course instead.
Oh, you think it's on some sort of Wunderkind program?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't put it past them.
Or Wonder Kid, like the Great.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, so we're introduced to a couple of different characters this episode. There's the father of the cadet who died.
Mm-hmm.
Is there in a supporting role, obviously to guilt Wesley. You know, not knowingly. He's actually quite a nice, pleasant man, but by all accounts, from what we see.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything wrong. He's not like being malicious or anything.
No, but because of like the way he talks about his son, though, and especially when it's kind of suggested that it's his son's fault that he died because he was like a reckless pilot. Like he's so apologetic about it. He doesn't get defensive, and you know, like Wesley's guilt is eating at him because this man now believes that his son's to blame for what went on, and that's the key thing here as well, is that it isn't actually Wesley's fault. They have a leader. They have a sort of captain of the little squad who is also probably the second main character of the episode in many ways. Let me just get his name again because
something.
Nicholas Locarno. A bit of trivia on this one, which we would never have known otherwise, but Tara gave me some info here on this. So he actually shows up as a different character on the actor. That is obviously he shows up as a different character on Voyager. But what's funny is that he's so similar to this character that the fan base have just kind of jokingly assumed that he went into witness protection and changed his name at some point because he's basically the same dude. So
he clearly answered the casting call for a very similar character. I went, I'll do.
Yep. So we are going to see him again, but it's not really him technically, but whatever. So yeah, he's kind of like behind it all. He's the one who's kind of like guilting Wesley in, and honestly, it felt quite manipulative at times. The way he was trying to trick Wesley into, no, you do this for your team. This is like you're doing it for us. Like you.
Yeah, outright, because what they're doing was banned. Beyond just that someone died, it was banned because it could lead to people dying. Yeah,
for 100 years, Picard says that it literally killed all 5 people involved. The last time it had been attempted. So
right,
yeah.
So this time it was let's stay quiet so we don't all get kicked out.
Yeah, and this kid we hear is like, you know, top of his class. He's like a legendary student, and
I think he's about to graduate out. He's on the verge.
Which it makes sense that like the seniors are the captains to squads of like freshmen, effectively. You know, to put it in modern day college terms.
Like the youngest on the squad, I think, still, because he makes a comment about how, I picked you, when others thought, someone older should have had a shot.
Yeah. So interesting little thing actually. I noticed that they have like the little marks on their collar for their rank, but it's different from the actual officers. It's like a education equivalent. So it's like, okay, we can recognize that there's a hierarchy here, but none of you are actually graduated officers yet.
That's what every school needs, an established hierarchy as opposed to an unofficial one.
Oh yeah, that would help well if like all the final years all walking around with badges in their collar that said, yes, we're in charge here. You're lower in the pecking order.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knew it was true anyway, but yeah, why not put a badge on it?
Yeah, so the actual mystery is fine. I think where the actual drama comes from the episode is when the I can't remember what her rank was, the one who's leading the inquiry, but she is asking these questions and the cadets are answering them, but there's just something off about it. It's just like there's nothing particularly damning in any of the answers, but it does feel like they're holding something back, that there's certainly something just missing from the whole thing.
Yeah, it's all very convenient. It's like just plausible enough that they'll get away with it.
Yeah, and I think it's all those awkward moments, it's those awkward glances, and like Picard kind of sensing that there's something not quite right here. Probably one of the best scenes of the episode, honestly, is like when Crusher as in Beverly Crusher, goes to Wesley, and it's after like he's given his testimony, but there's a little bit of like evidence to suggest that he's not being entirely honest. It's just about the flight formation. Like they basically captured like an image of the flight formation off like a station next on a moon or something, like from however
Some
far away.
satellite, I think, yeah.
And it's like they were supposed to be in this diamond formation, but they were actually in this kind of circular thing. And obviously we watch at this point in the episode. It's not until Picard explains what this thing they tried to do is. That's later, so we don't really know what they were doing. But it's like, wait, that's like the opposite of what you are saying you were doing. And Beverly comes to talk to him and says, obviously there's something wrong here, so maybe someone's tampered with it. I know you're telling the truth though. I like that obviously he doesn't outright say, no, I'm not, so drop it. But he does look her in the face and says, don't try and help me on this. Like
There's a couple of moments like that.
Yeah.
Early on when they show up. Like it's this touching reunion with Picard and his mum. And then the captain comes in, he's like, we have matters to discuss. Leave us, mother.
Yeah. I think what's interesting here is that it's well written as an episode, I think, because Wesley, the entire time he's been convinced, Nicholas does feel like he's being quite manipulative because he's talking about the honor of like your team and that we're there to protect each other, and that's kind of like contradicting, and it's kind of like clashing with what Picard said, which is that ultimately, as a Starfleet officer, your duty is to the truth, and it's that comes first and foremost. And I think what's nice about the way this episode is written is that it does kind of feel like when Wesley is refusing to answer things and he's sort of respectfully trying to decline on answering direct questions, whether it comes to Picard or his mother, it does always feel like there is like some sense of loyalty that he's doing it for these other people that he thinks he should be protecting, as opposed to it's just that he's out for himself, because it's not him directly that would be the main one at fault.
Yeah, I think it helps that it makes it clear pretty early on that he wants to go clean and just admit to it. I think we see that after the very first hearing.
Yeah.
After the first session, where he's like, look, we said we weren't going to lie. They're already on to something. Let's just come clean. And he's talked out of it, not for his sake, but for the group.
Yeah. And it's later in the episode when Picard like sort of like realizes, based on a bit, because he's got Data and Geordi, which actually I love how that freaks Wesley out when Beverly mentions, oh yeah, Geordi and Data are looking into all the data. I said data again. The information, all the diagnostics, all the evidence. He immediately has like oh no, they'll find something. Like, I've worked with them. They're too good.
Don't let them.
They'll find something these chumps down here won't. Like, don't do that. And sure enough, like, there's the piece of evidence about something to do with the coolant, and it's like, because the idea being is that when they do this like star formation thing, is that they release energy and it makes like a visual star. It's like a fireworks show almost.
Yeah, they dump fuel and then ignite it, and it's a explosion in a shape. Yeah. They all do it in formation.
Yeah, so telling me this is quite a dangerous thing does not a stretch. It sounds dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds pretty dangerous. So Picard like calls him in and like explains this, and Wesley refuses to admit that this is the truth. And I think what I love about the scene is that Picard isn't mad at him until he refuses to admit it. And then that's when he like switches to like stern captain, and like brings up their history, brings up the first episode of the show, brings up that he always believed he'd make a good officer, and he's never doubted that until this moment. And it ties into, Picard, like there's a couple of lines from Picard, a couple of scenes where he talks about, making a mistake in his past, and there's this old caretaker on the grounds that he goes up and sees.
It's one we've heard about before.
Yeah, and he's an actor. The actor playing this character, like I've seen in a couple of things. I couldn't tell you what they are though. Like, but he's definitely one of those actors that's just been in so many things that I've definitely seen.
He was in like things for decades.
Yeah, there's just a little bit of their conversation early on where Picard's trying to like thank him for like getting him out of a jam once upon a time, and like part of what this old man says back to him is like, you just needed time to make the right choice. You knew what had to be done. You just had to sort of like,
needed a push.
Yeah, and ultimately that's what Picard does for Wesley in this episode. So I appreciate that Picard does get so stern with him because he thinks that's what he needs. He needs to hear this speech. He needs to have this motivation. And at the end, when it's all said and done, and Wesley has like made the choice to stand up and kind of be honest and tell them the truth. A couple of things I like about the resolution to this episode is one, that Picard is like, yeah, you should still feel bad. Like, this is something that's going to linger for a bit, and you're going to stay back for a year, and all of a sudden, all of the other students aren't going to trust you because you effectively, I mean, I don't see it as you ratting them out, but they're going to see that as what you did. You did it out of honor, which is great. And it does give him like a sort of final line of encouragement, and sort of like it ends in a sort of nice note, but it's like, yeah, you have to accept that you're going to have a rough year of like, and maybe even a rough couple of years.
You effed up. You got consequences.
So that's. So I like that part. I also like the part which is we hear that the captain, because there's a scene with Wesley and Nicholas where after he's seen Picard, and he basically says to Nicholas, like, I think I'm going to tell them because I can't do this. Like, we have to come clean. We have to do this. And Nicholas really lays on the guilt, really lays on, no, we do what's right for the team. And it does ultimately always feel a little bit on the selfish side, that it's convenient that works for you. Like, would you still have this same opinion if it wasn't? And the interesting thing about the ending is that we hear that they were thinking of expelling the entire team for what they did. And he actually stood up and said, no, I'll take full responsibility. I was the captain. I convinced them to do it. This is on me. I'll take everything. Which is nice in a couple of ways. One, it sort of shows that despite all the vibes I got from him, he's still kind of stuck to his guns and in what he was saying, which is interesting.
As much as it was malicious and manipulative in the way he was like, oh, this is good for all of us, once it came down to it, he did decide to still, look out for his team as well. It was like, well, the choice has been made now. Either we all go, or I can just take the extra responsibility. It'll be a bit worse for me because maybe they'll put something extra on his record or something. But,
you could debate, I suppose, if like, would he do this if, like, because ultimately once Wesley's made this speech, right, and they're found out, and he's given a chance to speak, and he sort of declines and says he has nothing to add. You do sort of think like him going out of his way to sort of protect them at this point is effectively doing what Wesley's done here, is like, okay, now I'm in this position, what's the honourable way of dealing with this? What's the way to handle this and sort of like keep some respect for myself? And that's kind of what it is. Is there a situation where he would stick up to protect his team? Like, let's say, I mean, we know it's not going that way in the episode because it's like, okay, well, we have no evidence to really go any further, but we're just going to reprimand you and take away your flight privileges. But let's say, for example, they were just going, you know what? We think there's something fishy here, so we're just going to play the odds and expel all of you. Like, it'd be an interesting question to see, would Nicholas stand up there and take full responsibility at that point, where he could save the rest of them, instead of them all being expelled, and that's it.
Given the choice he makes off screen, at the end, I'm inclined to say yes, he probably does.
Yeah.
But, we'll never know.
It's just interesting to think about. I thought that little caveat at the end just is like, that made him a little more interesting as a character. Up until this point, he felt fairly straightforward, and I think that little tidbit at the end just gave him a little bit of extra layering, just to just give it a bit of weight, give it a bit more of a character. Because it's like, this is the thing, like there was a selfish quality to it, because it's like, oh, I'm about to graduate, so I want to pull off this spectacular thing that no one who's currently alive has ever really seen. Well, at least the humans. there's Vulcans and stuff kicking about who we know live longer, but so it was kind of like, that was the motivation, is that he wanted to put on something spectacular for his exit.
I assume as well that there are professionals who do still pull this off, because they're still, ultimately the cadets, they're the best in the academy right now, and they talk about how there's competitions against other schools, right? So I'm assuming that in the world of Star Trek, this is, it's no different to performance flights that you get with, plane squadrons now, like, I don't know, like Red Arrows, for example. So I'm assuming there are professional level pilots who have pulled this off. It's just that no one's seen it at the academy. Like, no one's seen it at that level.
Yeah. So, but you have this motivation for him. You have all these things kind of. So the guilt is more with him. And maybe that's part of like if for the episode to even go a bit further than it actually does. Maybe what they could have done is kind of like actually give him more of an arc in the episode itself, and like maybe see a little bit more of him dealing with it. And I get why you don't, because we're focusing on Wesley and whatever, but his arc, it's actually kind of interesting to see what he's going through. And again, I don't know if I'd have said that if the ending didn't paint him as like, no, he's kind of honorable to his word at the very least. In the end.
Yeah, I think it just recontextualizes it a little bit and stops him just being scared and selfish, and makes him more of a real person that there's a reason why Wesley and the others did trust him enough to try this in the first place.
Yeah, it goes into like, obviously he made a mistake, and it's a mistake that got someone killed. So I mean, yeah, it sounds justifiable that they'd expel him for that. I mean, ultimately, it's a pretty severe thing. But he clearly does still have some of those natural leadership qualities in that he is able to rally people around him. He has got this confidence. Like there's a lot of things to suggest why he was in the role he was in the first place.
He's Picard with extra ego.
yeah, I suppose. It's not that Kirk was lacking ego, if I recall.
No, which is why I said Picard and not Kirk.
No, I'm pointing out though that other successful captains have had a bit of ego.
That is true, which is why I think he could have been a successful captain as well. I think it's clear the parallel here with Picard specifically. One, because that's this show, but two, Wesley mentions, I think, that the group almost see him as a bit of a father figure as well, because he kind of looks after them all, and that's obviously a relationship he's had with Picard over the show. So there's that clear dynamic that's supposed to be established there.
Yeah. So no, not a bad episode by any means. It's kind of a coming of age thing. It's about owning up to your mistakes. This idea that when you're young, you do make blunders. There's learning experiences you have,
but also it acknowledges that there are consequences for those as well.
Yeah, because it's that kind of thing, going back to this Nicholas character. Like, I mean, okay, I get why he's not allowed to be in Starfleet anymore, but part of you kind of hopes after the ending, you're like, well, hopefully he still gets to find success in something else. He's paid his, his consequences have been paid now, effectively. Maybe not emotionally. He's going to, obviously this will be on his conscience for a long time, but like, what does he do now?
Career-wise,
and what does he use those skills that he has that something maybe that's less combat or dangerous, where he can use some of these leadership skills in a different way. So credit there for having that extra little bit of flavor, that extra little bit of tinge that kind of separates some of these Star Trek episodes from other shows that okay, we'll do a trial episode, or we'll do an episode where someone is having to own up for something. Let's just give it a little bit extra space.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, not bad. So that was the first duty. What is coming up next time, you might ask? Well, episode 20 next time is called Cost of Living, and this is the description on IMDb. As undetectable parasites devour the ship, Deanna's mother arrives.
Oh boy.
Taking young Alexander under her wing, en route to meeting a man that she's blindly agreed to marry. Okay, there's a lot to
this could be gold, or it could be terrible, or third option, both at the same time. So
Troy's mother has got a blind wedding, and she's going to befriend Worf's son on the journey to this wedding. I don't know.
It's a shit about the parasites.
I know. That's the B plot. That's in the background.
Oh, it definitely is.
This is going to be Worf like shocked and horrified of the influence that Troy's mother.
Teaching my son.
Yeah. She's teaching him how to be weak. Deanna, fix this right now. Oh dear.
Yeah, either gold or terrible, or both at the same time, which I think is probably the most likely answer.
Probably, yeah, that's the most likely answer, but we shall see. So yeah, let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. It helps us out a lot if you do. And of course, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 per month. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is owning up to when he's not in complete control.